Good morning. My name is Alex Ansary. It is February 21st in the year 2019. And it would be 5 years ago that at the moment, my most watched video, my interview with Matthew Stein, took place in Portland, Oregon. And we talked about the threats of EMPs and a massive solar event to our electric grid, ways to prepare, things to consider. And there are conversations that are being had right now on the global stage regarding this and the potential of a geopolitical crisis, in which videos like mine, that it was produced about 5 years ago, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life after I produced that video. There was a lot of bad luck that, in fact, I encountered in my life trying to present this information to others. But I always suspected there would be a time in which more elements of our population would wake up and potentially find my content. And I believe that most of the people are going to be finding my content many years into the future, while most people still today call me crazy, call me a right-wing lunatic or a libtard, depend on what side of the political FEMA fence that they're on. This has created limitations for me to help the most people with this unnecessary type of judgment. In their eyes, it almost discredits the good work that I've done. And so there's a lot of good work that I have done. And there's some things that I kept out of that interview and discussion with Matthew because he was not comfortable going in certain directions out of complete respect to Matthew, right? Not everybody is going to go in a direction where they're going to openly be labeled a conspiracy theorist. They want to sell books. They want to continue to be seen as a professional. That's fair. That's respectable. Not all of us, though, are going to limit the things that we talk about. So there were some things that I made sure that I would or did keep out of that interview. And that was the idea that they had already armed, for example, foreign government nations like China with EMP technology for a reason, because China is going to be used as a tool. So there's a number of different things that I want to talk to you with regards to this topic. And this is actually going to be kind of a series. So the most important thing that I wanted to start talking about, and then getting more specific into like our own nation psyops, the way that they've divided our nation over the illusions of separation, from politics to race to belief systems. They've divided our nation. Even people that Matthew Stein talked to, Alex Jones of Infowars.com, have been instrumental in that divide, as well as people on the left in the mainstream media. Independents like myself want to see Americans like you and people around the world better prepared to deal with the crisis that's coming, because you need to be given a holistic worldview or understanding on what's taking place, including the idea that what could be about to take place, even the Norse mythos idea of Ragnarok, or the idea of the sun exploding or no longer being active, dying off, the grand solar minimum obsession that some people have. What if we need to see a major change take place within the heavens, if you will, that shakes things up down here on Earth, in order for the world government to stop killing millions of people at once? Because if you really look closely at what's taking place, when have we really had peace? And when are we ever going to have it? Unless the powers that be are no longer in the powerful position that they are in. What do they rely on to do some of the things that they do today? Technology, satellites, social media. If they didn't have the social media tech giants in their pocket, they wouldn't be able to divide us so easily. Most people are not told the truth about how social media is actually in the pocket of the White House, and it's used each administration for what the agenda is. And a lot of people are too busy into just straight demonizing or supporting a politician. Enter the name here. They're too into the political matrix to really take a look at what's really going on. And it's sad and it's unfortunate. That interview that was done in 2014. And I was homeless immediately afterwards. It wasn't directly dealing with the interview. It was the fact that I came back to Portland with nothing, and the fact that I had 10 years of multimedia activism that talked about things like that wasn't enough. wasn't enough for the so-called tolerant left to even find a place for me to park my car. And so it would be years afterwards that would eventually settle somewhere off the grid in Colorado. That's where I am now. I was just beginning my homeless experience when you saw that interview between myself and Matthew, and we talked for 3 hours. Although it took me a couple years to get that edited because I had some computer failures. So that didn't exactly go live right away. And so I had a lot of challenge. I had to go through my own urban survival story. And now I'm going through my own rural survival story in isolation off the grid in rural Colorado, where my years of activism has not brought me community, it's brought me isolation. For years, they said that the things that I was talking about were crazy. Everything from warning about Russia to warning about China to warning about the sun to warning about the zombie apocalypse. I've been treated as someone with a mental health crisis for years. And the thing is, like, I'm making this podcast to you from isolation. I barely have enough fuel because we're snowed in, right? To keep the heat on. I'm living a rough life as a result of things that I've talked about. I believe this. And so if some of you are allegedly waking up to some of these potentials, how can I be of better assistance to you? Because I have so much more information and perspectives to give. Going back to something I was saying earlier, there's a lot of things that you didn't hear me get into in those 3 hours with Matthew because he was not comfortable going in a certain direction. And there's a lot of people now, especially in recent years, that aren't even comfortable being my guest anymore. You know, my dad comes from the Middle East. My mother is was born in Oregon. All of this stuff that's taking place has isolated me from the so-called truth movement and society. Even the so-called anti-racist or anti-fa or whatever, they're in a different mindset. They're like a fight, fight, fight political mindset. I'm not in that mindset. I speak about things of a deep philosophical nature that both the left and the right scoff at, as well as members of various religions, including the religion of Islam. Okay, so I'm separated even from the Eastern world because the things that I talk about here in North America are outside the box. You might notice a little logo there, OTBTV, that stands for outside the box. There is a reason this was named, entitled Outside the Box. And there's a reason how my personal life experiences in this world has taught me a number of things. From the early visions of a red sky and no power, and basically, almost having a vision of the world down below burning while I stood up on a hilltop watching. And throughout my whole life, every time that I would find myself at a hilltop, I would ask myself, is this the hilltop? Is this the hilltop? How about this? One time I was renting a room in 2010 in Southwest Portland, right off Barber Boulevard, and I wondered if this was the hilltop. Now I'm here in Southwest Colorado on a hill, wondering if this is the hilltop. And I don't even think it is. I think that there's still some additional journeys that I will be making off the grid and within Colorado and or the Four Corners and other parts of Colorado. But I'm definitely alienated by the energies that I feel from the people and psychologies of the rest of Colorado, especially the Springs and Denver. There's a lot of low energy there, a lot of really low energy there. That's why I like to keep it rural. But the problem is there is a real lack of awareness, knowledge, and appreciation of those that are coming in with knowledge. When you're someone like me coming into a rural area, it's viewed by most as some sort of invasion from the southern border and be connected with that, as opposed to someone that can contribute to their community. So things are pretty fucked up, folks, and you need to know that. In all my travels throughout this United States, and I've really broken my back to bring you information. Now we're in a day and age where people don't even want me to talk. And the fact of the matter is, there aren't a lot of people like me that have spent years warning you about foreign governments marching on our nation in the future, connections with solar events, and the direct ties between solar maximums and wars breaking out. This was another area that Matthew didn't want to go in. Okay, this stuff's considered fringe. Some of you need to take this way more seriously. This is way more important than EMP and just a solar event that would take out the grid. It includes, how else does the sun impact us? What else does Alex Ansary have to share with you? You need to go over to solarmaxnews.com and check out that PDF, right? It may not be professionally written, right? It may be considered to be, crap to some people, but is there room for growth? Can other people also weigh in with their 2 cents as we magnify the focus on how these changes in the sun are changing us as human beings. How there is a connection with the paranormal. There are periods in which there are more ghost sightings, when the sun is more active, when you're getting those really strong geomagnetic storms. So you can go back and take elements of that knowledge from Matthew Stein about how the sun impacts our reality, and then go over to spaceweather.gov and then track when there are geomagnetic storms, but go deeper with regards to what you know about how the sun impacts us and how it can impact you and how you can make it a positive, and how if you're unconscious about it, it can actually be something that works against you if you don't know how to control your own emotions, if you don't know how to meditate. Now, I'm willing to walk through this process with you, but I would like a lot more support from my audience and new audience members with regards to my dialogue on the sun. I want to see that from you. I want to hear that from you in emails, in comments, okay? Because I've spent a lot of time talking about politics, spent a lot of time talking about certain arbitrary theories about the paranormal. I spent a lot of time, even exposing some elements of extremism within the truth movement in order to separate myself from that, being confused with that, but also trying to help other people wake up. I've also talked a little bit about off-grid living, but if we talk about the core of some of the things that I talk about and how it's going to be impacting the most people, going beyond race, politics, and geography, then it's all my dialogue about the sun, which doesn't end but only begins when we talk EMP. That is just one expression of a physical, real world result of the sun going into hyperaction. Okay, this is where the conversation begins when people go, oh, okay, this impacts us. This affects us. This is not outside of ourselves. Get some more coffee. This directly impacts us. And then once you start studying, right, type in solar flares and spirituality, you're going to get a number of different perspectives, but start at one point of the polarity, whatever it is, whatever perceived polarity, and then you will find yourselves eventually, if you keep an open mind, somewhere else. Do not stay on fear of doomsday. Okay, in this world of duality, you need to be able to see things from multiple sides. How is the return of the sun, and let me slow this down here, think about this, how is the return of the sun often confused for other things and other outcomes, like something out of a movie like Superman? You know what? I don't think so. I think the greater question is, how does the return of the sun play a role in the end in our liberation? Because I'm going to slow this down, because there needs to be time to talk about how when the grid goes down, how this is going to impact relationships. And we need to talk about the dark side. We also need to talk about the light side. The dark side, which we'll elaborate on more, you're getting extreme cliff notes. The dark side would be cannibalism, human trafficking, rape, gangs, micro-tribes. The long-term potentials is good rising over evil. Once evil is no longer able to just piggyback on these technologies specifically that include mind control. This is where I'm going to lose some people that want to stay in their orthodox safe space of the political left and right? The safe space. For the Republicans and the Democrats, I can't provide you a safe space, Republicans and Democrats. Don't say you're outside the left-right paradigm while calling yourself a Republican. Let's all just bring ourselves up to speed. Because in the end, all of this political hatred and all this nonsense talks of homicide of people's political enemies, I mean, get straight, kid. This is what people talk about now. It's nut talk. It's nutter. It's not going to get better until we see a major shift in consciousness. Now, there's time and there's ways, many ways in which people can shift their consciousness and go, screw you, social media machine. We're not going to buy your fake news, left-right paradigm, race war theology. We're going to show the world what love looks like. I'm not seeing it. I see people say love trumps hate. Yeah, but only when love bothers to show up, when love comes walking in. But you know what? This isn't a Van Halen song. This is reality. When does what love come walking in? When do the people come together, regardless of what they look like, whether their skin is burnt or not, right? I've only been in one culture. I've only been in the white culture, white society, right? I've only lived with a white family. But because of my father's ancestry and background, do people treat me like I'm a person with knowledge when I walk through this town? Or do I think that they're wondering if I came out of a caravan? I shouldn't have to explain to people the difference between apathy and empathy in this day and age if you've evolved beyond a certain point. But the reality is, we're not evolving, some of us. Elements of our society are going the other way. The good part about the internet is that this is the only place in this known universe in which I have value to humans. It's through the YouTube channel alone. And that's a fact check. I even realized that Facebook was a limitation, so I quit Facebook. Some of those people weren't even tapping into my knowledge on YouTube. It was about this Facebook interaction and dopamine addiction. So I stepped away from it. I stepped away from it because I realized you can go off grid, but unless you step away from all that social media intoxication, hell, you can take the person out of Babylon, but you can't necessarily take Babylon out of the person. And I've literally seen living in the woods how social media and Facebook has fucked up people that normally would be more connected to each other and nature. The disinformation, race baiting, and divide, conservative versus liberal, and all this other nonsense, especially when independents are called liberals and conservatives falsely by their perceived political enemy, people that want to punish them for not joining the left gang or the right gang. It's a nightmare for those of us that don't want either. We just want to be free philosophers, operate outside of the bipolar political madness. This you've got to understand. When I take the time to articulate to you, I'm more concerned with what's happening to the species and the planet, what's going on with the cosmos, the true battle of good and evil. And I see how our technological grid plays a role in the dark side, controlling people. Now, in another video, we'll talk at greater lengths, again, extreme cliff notes, about how long-term there could be a restoration of balance over time that heals the collective consciousness. Because right now, the collective consciousness is absolutely toxic. Even our blood, even the fear that we go through, the fear that we're going to be murdered, or the fear that some of us are going to be put into camps, whether it be based on our names or whatnot, if certain elements of the far right ethno state win. There are dangers coming to the United States if the grid doesn't go down. We have nothing but hell awaiting us, unless there's something to arrest this system. And the reason I'm just cutting to the chase there, and I'm not hoping for destruction, it's that destruction's happening now. What's going to stop the destruction? And in the end, what's going to stop the destruction of even white people being hunted down? Because in the end, I've even foreseen this being a divine intervention. The solar flares being a divine intervention when foreign troops may be walking up in our grill. Go to the front page of my YouTube channel and watch Fourth Horse Rising. I want to thank you very much for doing so. Hit pause now, watch it, come back. Are you with me now? Do you see now how the sun could be a neutralizer during World War III? Can you hear me now? Not only is there a connection from Alexander Chavinsky, who has looked at the solar cycles of 2,500 years, seen periods of war and peace, and then others in the United States, Edward Dewey, Robert Becker, and another individual. They're known as scientists that looked at his information to confirm if there is, in fact, a pattern. And they confirmed it and took their analysis even further. During periods of intense geomagnetic activity, there are even periods of mass killings. And so right now we have cosmic rays coming in from the solar minimum. And some say, and I've coined the term grand solar minimum, as if we may be going into another ice age. However, in a couple of years, we can also see the sun act up. I suspect that we're going to see a massive solar cycle after this solar minimum. And these types of extreme fluctuations from a low to a high have massive impacts on consciousness. Now, within the fireball of war, is the fireball or the spark or the light of consciousness. It is not all one thing. In the darkness, literally, the smallest of lights shines so bright. And I've been saying that just for years. But a lot of the stuff that I talk about regarding spirituality has to do with the sun. And in other videos, like yesterday, I did a 1 hour reading on all things Celtic, also in my ancestry, specifically through the Lewis line of my grandmother. And so I remember her talking to me about the Welsh ancestry. And so, yes, I have ancestry in different parts of the planet. And in many of the world's mythologies, when I actually sit down and read it, there is this reverence for the sun. There is a reverence for the sun in so many of your ancestries. It's in your heritage. And yet you live in a world today where there are forces of influence and ignorance, even in the comment section, that are trying to turn us away from our heritage of spirituality. They say, oh, that's Luciferian pagan. All you can do is just look at the main world religions, where they literally took the sun symbolism and they made it theirs and changed it, or they demonized it. And it's like, we need to address this now as people wake up out of the orthodox worldviews. They need to have a return to the ancient studies. That doesn't mean that you go out and you sacrifice something to the sun. And when people come out and they want to demonize our ancestry and our heritage from all the places of the world, you need to ask yourself if that's someone that's actually representing your people or representing the devil of this world, the agent Smith of this world. When people want to come at you and present arguments and say, hey, just because I say so in the comment section, go over here. Hey, the sun doesn't exist, but you know what does exist? This type of theory over here. Go over here. Don't be led just because you're realizing that the world is not as it seems. Do not allow yourself to be led by these anonymous people on the internet that are highly influential for specific reasons, that want to send us in these fake directions. Sure, in a way it is like we're living in a Truman Show. But it's not literally like the Truman Show. The Truman Show is more like a metaphor for the type of spiritual attack that the body of mankind is going under in the petri dish that we are experiencing. Just because we are in a petri dish doesn't mean that petri dish is necessarily flat. But we are in a simulation, and we should be questioning what is going on. We need to be looking deeper down the rabbit hole. But understand that long term, without social media, reminding people to be afraid of barbarians or certain types of men and things of that nature, normal, healthy relationships and more, community, right? I mean, we can literally advance a point of not even needing the big banks or the police. I kid you not. All these things are possible for us to live in a world without them. But there has to be deprogramming. How can there even be such a thing as deprogramming unless the actual programming goes away? Now, I want you to think about they live. And they live, they don't even get to the point, I'm using as a metaphor, they don't even get to the point of saving the world until they get to the top of that rooftop and they take down that satellite. They take down that satellite that is infecting the people with mind control. Okay, that's a metaphor. Someone could say, well, no, that's literal. There are literal signals. Well, where are the signals? A lot of signals are up in space, powered by satellites. So there's those that you know about, there's those that you don't know about. And so on one level, there would be massive starvation and some people would be targeted for their resources. You think that I don't live in fear, living all alone where I live, being surrounded by the element that I'm surrounded by? I mean, these people have some serious issues with people that are different, but they're not yet going a particular direction. But when I look at the memes around the world, it really seems that there's going to be something happening after the 2020 election. Or even if Trump loses, there'll be an element of America that'll be like, fuck this, bro. We're not going back to this. And it seems like so much is being manufactured by the controllers just to get people to rise up against each other. And I don't hear people on the left or the right talking about that. They're more or less saying we're the lesser of the evils in this bipolar fight over civilization or the world or America or what they'll call Western civilization, while actually doing things that demonize the people existing today under Western civilization. They would literally be of such a low level of consciousness, the extremists of our world, that they would not be able to see how their actions are being recorded, are all over YouTube. And just because law enforcement lets you get away with certain things for a number of years, that's only to popularize the certain types of extremism, only to build up the movement, only to smash it down with a foreign army once the threat gets big enough. And they can even call in foreign armies to deal with elements of the left and the right, or both, as they get the left and the right to go after each other, as they amp up our nation for civil war. So keep this in mind, reeling this back. There are people that will talk to you about these things from a position of pure fear, without explaining to you on one level how, unless we see a major event like this from the sun, what's going to stop this machine that rules our lives from killing us as well? This includes robots. You need to think about the future robot apocalypse that's being basically designed to create a world without us. And I would say, more specifically, some of us more than some of you. First, they're already doing it in Afghanistan and Iraq, but there's few people that will call out the robot apocalypse there because they felt they're not affected by this. Now, snapshot that thought and tell me how that thought of we're not affected by this somehow leads to a happy America in the future when robots manned by China and Russia come looking for you. How then would you not look at the sun as a savior? Pay attention then. I'm going to bring this to a close. This is going to be part of a series. This is going to be a playlist. And I hope the people from the Matthew Stein interview understand this is more than just getting Band-Aids for your feet when you're going to go hiking so you can prep for the post. You understand now that there is so much more knowledge, hopefully, than just getting Band-Aids for your feet and some stored food and getting ready to hike when the sun gets active. It's what the sun does to people. It's how a more active sun is something that we see when there are major world wars that are taking place. How extreme solar activity could be so extreme, though, on the other end, that it can burn out electric circuits and more. Well, what if in the future we're dealing with technology that is basically euthanizing us and killing us? How much are we going to be worshiping technology in the future when it's surpassing our humanity on the first level and then actually coming after some of us? Cyborgs, androids, race wars of the future, robot apocalypses. This is what we're facing. And this is terrifying. China's not a savior, not with 1 million Muslims in camps. When people are conditioned to just be okay with certain people being put into camps, we know how history repeats itself. History already has repeated itself. It's not that history will repeat itself, it's that history is repeating itself. And we're asking ourselves, what's going to stop this? Now, in future episodes, here are some ideas for us to consider. We can do a group review of Burl Payne's ebook on the sun, and the section in which he talks about a collective meditation to calm the sun based on things that may be potential, that we as a collective human species may be able to interact with the sun. Can we then take that even farther? Then we can even look at things like the magical battle of Britain, be Dion Fortune, and look at how even through collective prayer, we can put up certain defenses if attacking forces are coming against us, our families, and our communities. See, the knowledge that I have for you is bigger than what you're even aware of when you click play and you risk a few minutes of your precious time opening up your mind. But there's so much more knowledge that you need to have about putting Band-Aids on your feet for long emergency walks after the solar flare. I mean, you need to look at the totality of this and how for years people have conditioned us to be afraid of the sun, to see the sun as bring something that brings cancer for all people, or maybe a certain demographic. But ultimately, is the sun something that threatens biological creatures on the earth? Or is the sun this thing that brings us this radiance that brings us these fresh fruits and vegetables? That literally, that light in the sky that powers the marijuana that grows out of the ground, that light in the sky that's not a fake light, that literally is needed to produce the moisture. Enough moisture combined with the soil, combined with the sun, combined with the elements and the cooperation of the elements, including the wind, i.e. also the world of spirit. It's a combination of elements that are not there to oppress us. And we've been taught in this world that certain people that literally come from the land of the sun are lesser than, or that the sun is a threatening thing. We are literally taught in this world toxic thoughts about the sun. As I move in on my conclusion to this introductory podcast on this topic, please subscribe for more. And I live on basically 300 a month. Sometimes people send donations if you're able to contribute to this. If all of you in the audience, for the most part, got it at this point that the sun is way more relevant as a topic to even elements of my audience that may prefer other things, like maybe this is the time where people are waking up, that we need to be talking about this on a regular basis as we approach 2020. I haven't seen a lot of support from the audience for the individual commentaries that I've done on the sun. See, and I'd like to see some change, some positive change. I'd like to see people look into my own individual work. And I'd like to hear some positive, not just exclusively negative. I'd like to hear some positive feedback on what I've discovered and what my warnings are for you about 2025. And some of you feel this in your heart. You feel 2025. You're noticing now the world of science talk about 2025. You're noticing in the world of war, you're hearing about 2025 Endgames. And some of you have been around long enough to hear Alex Ansary talk about 2025 as far back as when I was living in Portland, Oregon, living on that ley line, tapping into those energies. There's a period in time after 2012 came where it's like that was too intense. And it's like the ways in which people are acting now, it's like the end of the world's already taken place. That's like the race war programming has already infected even the left. Even as they say they're so loving, oh, they're so loving. I'm still waiting to see that. I'm still waiting to see that, to know something other than isolation. I'm still waiting to see that. And what I see is the end of this world slowly, the cycle, making way for a renewal that will not result in the end of the world, but maybe our world as we know it. And if you zoom back and you don't just think about your own lifetime and your own fornications and your own excess and your own desires, and you look at the totality of the species, even if you want to obsess on one ethnicity, I mean, certain things to even save us seem to almost need to happen. And that's a neutralization of this global military industrial complex. It's killing us. It's killing us. And ultimately, I don't think this is human. These are the things that I can't talk about with Matthew, but maybe I can talk about it with you. Ultimately, an evil force rules the earth. And ultimately, this evil force is dependent on technology working at a certain level. And that same evil force that works through governments that doesn't necessarily have to be named, but is beyond human, it is not more powerful than the sun. The sun is more powerful than that evil force that is trying to manipulate us into killing ourselves for it here on earth. Blood sacrifice after blood sacrifice after blood sacrifice. If the people were not propagandized by race war theology, and today they can't admit where they have been, today they won't admit, today they believe what they're told by the media if they're being told terrorists are out to get them. Or if the media tells them something else, they'll call it fake news. If they want to call it fake news, the world doesn't work in that new age law of attraction type of it gets to be fake or true based on whether you feel that it's real or true. That's like some new age stuff. Om, nothing wrong with a little bit of Om. Nothing wrong with namaste. Nothing wrong with genuine spiritual theories. But there's a lot of people that have tried to like terraform like reality to be like what they want it to be. That's fake news. That's real. Those people are threats. Without realizing so much of our media is controlled by them to where they can literally mind control whole demographics of people based on ethnicity, politics, and nationality or place of origin. And they can set people against people without the people realizing that they're under some sort of global control of an evil force that ultimately is terrified of the sun dethroning that evil force. It's almost as if the sun represents the 10th avatar, or the sun and its knowledge and the souls that it brings, and like a genuine deeper crystal children generation. There may be like children that have gifts. Let us never take that away from the children that are gifted. But the type of large scale shift that we need we have not yet seen. When we see that large shift, you will not see the far right dominate the comment sections. Let's say that there's something raising awareness about a injustice, and on YouTube there's 99 dislikes with 1 like. See, that type of nonsense won't exist anymore if people were waking up. There wouldn't be this, oh, we're winning on just simply some Young Turk YouTube channel or left-controlled network. No offense to those of you that are fans, but what we have in America, at least, and Europe, is a left-right echo chamber where people are like balkanizing into just simply, groups and circles of people that think like them, while demonizing the other group, while not grabbing a mirror and looking at their own ethnocentric behavior, race war theology, or racial leanings. It's like we literally, almost as if like the fallen world of man, at default, our biology is whack, Jack. And we're taught to worship ourselves. There are even some people that like to say that we're gods and whatnot, prancing around with their beautiful bodies. Oh yeah, we're spiritual and stuff. We're gods, bro. We're gods. No, we're fallen fractals of light, as far as I'm concerned, that are at the very beginning stages of finding our way out of this prison. And there's like so many steps in doing so, in evolving beyond this type of a world. And so certain types of self-praise that today's so-called spiritual narcissist engages in, i.e. New Ager, or channeler, follower of divination, you want to be careful with these folks. You want to be careful with these folks. So keep your focus on the sun, the changes that it brings, and do not let the world government structure push you into fear. What does liberation mean for you? Right now my feet are cold and I don't have enough fuel to keep the heat on. It's at 0 degrees. I don't have any allies for hundreds of miles. You need to understand that my brutal truth that you may be attracted to is the very thing that's isolated me. If you happen to live in the four corners of Colorado, find a way to contact me via email. Say hello. If there's other opportunities, if there's other ways you want to be a volunteer, right? There are no active volunteers from my core audience base. I appreciate when people donate. I'd like to see that continue to increase. I think that I can be a better asset to you as a host, energy-wise and consciousness-wise, if I was to live in a slightly higher vibrational environment. I can only imagine the type of energies that could come pouring through me. Right now, I'm suffering in mind, body, and spirit. Right now, I'm suffering at times with ideas of self-destruction because of the isolation and feeling judged by my audience. That and other things are driving a sense that I don't feel that the world wants me in it anymore. This isolation and sense of being judged is taking its toll on me now in new historic ways. And I pray for divine intervention. So I'm Alex Ansary signing off, and I ask that you subscribe, support, reach out in the ways in which you can. I also have barriers up to prevent sabotage from people that falsely present to be themselves to be helpers and potential allies because of the major downshifting in consciousness that seems to have accelerated since 2012. There's a lot of people out there that would love to sabotage what I'm doing. And a lot of good people out there that would like to reach out don't really know this and don't really know that I got to be careful who I even reply to at this point. When an email comes in, there are women that have offered adultery in the past, not recently, thank God, because I've mentioned it many, many times. And I've mentioned that a lot of the people that actually have contacted me for information, advice, off-grid tips have not been on the right side of history, have not had the best intentions, have been really quick to label me a libtard for not thinking like them. You need to be very careful when you're involved in sharing truth that helps liberate the human species, what types of humans you let get close. We're not alone in the universe. Humans are not part of a species that has overridden the Agent Smith nature themselves to be overtaken by evil. And when you look at the news and you read about face eating and you read about domestic violence and you hear about people going on shooting sprees, and I don't just mean the schools, I mean just general things. Does that look like a world that's on its way up to where a guy like me can just like trust random people that are the few to interview me? Or does there have to be increased standards? Do I need to know who you are? Is it safe for me to talk to anyone using an anonymous name? The answer is no. The answer is no. The answer is no. Because of the position that I'm in. So I'm Alex Ansary signing off.